Oh, I think she sniffed that one.
I'm not gonna say I'm disappointed. Fish boy. I was so bored. I'm excited for this one. I'm gonna be honest, okay? Hi everyone, it's me. In today's video, we are going to talk about sequels, because I feel like when you're reading series, sequels can really make or break the series or trilogy. And I feel like there have been a lot of sequels out there that just let you down. Like even in really, really good book series where overall I would like rate the entire series as a whole really highly, a lot of the time the sequels just fall short. And I've heard people talking about this as kind of like the curse of the sequel. And I find that sometimes in trilogies especially, we can have a really, really good first book that sets the world, sets the story, introduces us to the characters, and it's just really jam-packed and exciting. The sequel can kind of tend to be boring. It's just sometimes kind of used to conclude a few loose ends from the first book of whatever trilogy you're reading, and then maybe kind of weave things in together to set things up for the finale of the series, and then the finale is very exciting. So yeah, I feel like sometimes sequels get a bad rep, and I think it's justified. We have had some bad sequels out there. Just to name a few, I did make a list, and this list is a combination of like my personal opinion and also the general mass public's opinion. So if you did like some of these sequels that I'm about to list, please don't be offended. This is just, it's all for fun, right? It's just books. We like them or we don't like them. But for example, some bad sequels have been Insurgent from the Divergent series. Like Divergent was so good. Insurgent kind of let us down, and then, you know, to be honest, Allegiant, the third book in that series, was even worse. The Two Towers from the Lord of the Rings series, I love that trilogy, but The Two Towers, to me personally, was just so boring. The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King from the Crowns of Nyaxia series, I just recently read this, it's right here on my shelf. It was just, nothing really happened. New Moon from the Twilight series was just so slow and depressing for something non-fantasy. It Starts With Us, which is the infamous sequel to It Ends With Us by Coho. And I'm so sorry to say this, and I felt so bad putting this on my list, but Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets was not, it wasn't bad, it just didn't live up to the rest of the books in that series. Out of that series of 7 books, I would say personally, and I think this is popular opinion, but Chamber of Secrets was the weakest out of them, I think. Still love Harry Potter though, not saying anything bad about Harry Potter. So yeah, we've just had a lot of like infamously bad sequels out there, and that is not to say that all sequels have been bad. I also made a list of some good sequels, and so these books did not fall under the curse of the bad sequel. Catching Fire in the Hunger Games trilogy, that one was so good. It might be my favorite in the trilogy actually, and although Mockingjay let us all down, I feel like Catching Fire was so good. The Ballad of Never After in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephenie Garber is the best book in that trilogy, and I think the best book that she's ever written. A Court of Mist and Fury, need I say more? Like after ACOTAR, we get that. Amazing. And then also, this one might be an unpopular opinion, also Sarah J Maas, but in the Throne of Glass series, I loved Crown of Midnight. Like I thought Throne of Glass was okay, but once I read Crown of Midnight, I was like, I'm in this. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is there are good sequels out there, but I don't know. I've just been hearing about like the curse of the sequel and how sequels tend to let us down. So I decided to dedicate this video to just reading sequels, because over the past few weeks I have started a bunch of different series, trilogies, etc. And yeah, I've just read the first books in a lot of these series, and I feel like it would just be fun to read sequels for a week or two probably, because I have 4 on my list. It'll probably take me at least 2 weeks. But anyways, I do have them right here. So in this video, the sequels I'm going to read are The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the second book in the Folk of the Air series. The first book was The Cruel Prince. This is a YA fantasy series, and I truly loved The Cruel Prince. It was so much fun. I loved how there was a serious plot, but it didn't take itself too seriously. We had kind of whimsical fairy vibes, but also high stakes. And we just like, we were able to see how fairy teenagers hang out. And I found that really fun in The Cruel Prince, so really excited for The Wicked King. I'm also going to read A Gathering of Shadows. This is the second book in the A Darker Shade of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. Also a YA fantasy, but I feel like this honestly gives a bit more adult vibes. It's just like a little bit darker. The world is a little more deep and complex. The magic system's also a bit more complex than in The Cruel Prince, I think. I loved A Darker Shade of Magic. It was a 5-star read for me, so I'm really excited to continue on with this. Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard. This is the second book in the Red Queen series, another YA fantasy, and I enjoyed Red Queen. I thought it was a decent book. It wasn't anything groundbreaking for me. It didn't like wow me in any way, but I think it was a really fun read, and so yeah, I'm excited to continue on with this series. I have heard some mixed reviews about this book, so this one might fall under the curse of the sequel, but I always like to read things with an open mind. Hopefully I will enjoy this one as well. And the fourth book I don't have yet. It's going to arrive in the next few days, I think. I did order it online, but the sequel to Poppy War is Dragon Republic. This is by R.F. Kuang. This is an adult fantasy, I believe. I hope it has some very mature themes. More of a historical fantasy. It is set in a fantasy world, but it's based on true stories that happened in history. So the Poppy War specifically is based on a war that happened between Japan and China, and you see a lot of real historical elements that happened in this fantasy. Again, much darker themes. This book kind of like it was a lot to handle, but oh my gosh, it was so good. This was another 5-star read for me, so really excited to continue. And yeah, Dragon Republic is arriving in the next few days. So I'm gonna start with the other books first, and then by the time I finish those, I will have the sequel to this. That's what I'm gonna do for this video. We're gonna read some sequels, so let's just have some fun. We're actually gonna have Huffy pick which book we're gonna start with first, because I honestly cannot decide. So Huffy, take it away.
What do we got here?
So we have The Glass Sword. This is a YA fantasy, A Gathering of Shadows.
This one looks kind of saucy.
This is Wicked King. They're actually all YA. And this whoa. This one's got Fae. This one's got multiple universe Londons, like parallel universe Londons. And this one has people with silver blood.
This one.
I was gonna start with a lighter one first, but we're just gonna jump. Why is it so close?
Go. What do you think, Sage? Why don't you let her pick?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Oh, I think she sniffed that one.
She did.
Okay, it's official.
We have a boss. Everyone gets to say.
Oh!
Okay, everyone chose A Gathering of Shadows. I feel like I was gonna warm up to this one because I also just finished Poppy War and that was a very intense read. I was gonna do something a bit lighter, like maybe one of these two, but we're gonna dive right in.
You ready for the transition?
Sure. What do we do?
Hold it up.
I hope I did that transition justice. We're gonna start with A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. Just to give you a bit of a summary about this series in case you have not read it. A Darker Shade of Magic was set in a world with parallel world. We focused on parallel Londons just because that's where the story took place and that's where our main characters were. So we had Grey London, which basically had no magic. It was the closest to like our real world London. We had Red London, which had the best balance of magic. That is where our main character lived. White London, where magic was kind of taking over, like it was kind of overpowering the humanity. So it was kind of more of an evil environment. So that was White London. And then we had Black London, which had already been overrun with magic. It kind of imploded on itself and it kind of almost ceased to exist. Like it still exists, but they closed off the walls to Black London and just like no one ventures into Black London anymore. So that's where we're set. We have a really cool magic system and we have these main characters that are, one of them is a smuggler and one of them is a thief, and they kind of combine forces in the first book to go off on their adventure and their mission together. So that was A Darker Shade of Magic. I'm gonna get into this book now. I'm really, really excited. Let's get into it.
If only I could finish something, run straight through to the end, close a chapter dignified, dang girl, you did it again. But will it ever be enough when I'm bent on trying to keep it tough? Will I ever settle down?
Good morning, my friends. So yesterday we read 115 pages. So far, this sequel is giving very similar vibes to the first book, which is really great. It's got the same atmosphere, it's got the same very fast-paced chapters, which is something that I really enjoyed in A Darker Shade of Magic. And so far, like, I haven't gotten too deep into the story, obviously. I'm only on like page 100 out of 500 and something pages, but it does sound like we are setting up for a pretty interesting premise and plot. So I'm really excited to see how everything plays out. We have been introduced to a couple new characters. We actually have a whole other POV as well added in this book. Yeah, nothing bad to say so far. Also, I do have to take a moment to appreciate this paperback copy because I mentioned this a couple videos back, but one of my book pet peeves, especially with paperbacks, is when the spines crack, and this book has that super hard spine that The Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score had. So it's like pretty floppy in terms of, like, you know, it's a thick book, but it's a pretty floppy paperback, and it has that super hard spine. So when you open, spine barely bends, and I love that. So points for the spine. And we're gonna keep reading today.
If only I could find a way to put an angel on your shoulder, tell you true things every day.
All right, you guys, it's like 3 days later. I haven't really been vlogging in between just because I know I have a lot of books to get through in this video and I don't want it to like stretch out for too long, but I just finished this book and I'm gonna give you my rating, but I'm actually gonna give you just like my thoughts first. Overall, I did really enjoy this book. I thought it was a pretty strong sequel, but I do also have to say that I don't think it was as good as the first book for me. I feel like A Darker Shade of Magic was just so good. Like, it blew my mind. I loved the world. The pacing was so good. I loved all the characters. And although this book was really fun, I enjoyed being in that same world again. I feel like there were just a few things that were like not as good in this book compared to A Darker Shade of Magic. So first of all, I did like the story. I think that Schwab did a really good job at like making an actual plot in this book. So it didn't feel like this book was just trying to connect book 1 and 3. Like, we had a full story in itself in this book that made it more exciting. But I will say that the pacing in this book, I feel like, was just not as good as the first book. Like, when I read the first book, I thought it was so fast-paced. I loved the short chapters. I loved that like every scene had a purpose and it was pushing the story along. And I feel like in this book, we had a lot of scenes or conversations that maybe didn't have to happen or could have been combined into other scenes. So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like this book dragged on for a bit. Also, a big part of this book is, I'm not going to give spoilers, so I'm going to be a bit vague, but there's a big event that happens in this book, and I feel like the build up to it was so long. I think the event started on like page 350 or something, so it's like we had to read 350 pages of lead up until this event started, and then the action started. I kind of wish the build up was less, and then we could have seen more of the like action part, like when things were happening. There were also some really interesting new characters that were introduced to us. There's definitely one character that's new in this book that I am so excited to read more about. I really hope they play like a larger role in the third book, because I don't know, this character is just so funny and sassy and interesting and just like really fun to read. So I hope we see more of them. I'm being so vague, I just don't want to spoil anything. And then just one more thing that kind of took me out of this book is there was one character, one of the main characters, and I really liked this character in the first book, but in this book I found that their character arc and their journey was just like a little bit unbelievable to me, like very far-fetched. You know how a lot of the times in fantasy books you have a character that just like finds their magic and then their magic just like progresses, like they develop their skills so quickly and instantly. I understand why that has to be done in fantasy books to like push things forward, but I feel like in this book it was just like a little too ridiculous. Like, we just didn't see enough of the training, the progression, the failures. This one character who just found their magic was all of a sudden like this master and was able to battle and compete with all these other really highly trained people who have been developing their skill for like their entire lives. So yeah, I just found when that was happening, it kind of took me out of the story and like the immersiveness of it. So yeah, I am gonna give this book a 4-star rating, which isn't as good as the 5-star that I gave the first book, obviously, but it's still a decent good rating. Like, I would still say this is a good book. I do think it set up the third book really well. Like, at the end of this book. I'm really excited to continue on and see what happens in the last book of the trilogy. And so yeah, that is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. I'm a little bit let down. I'm not gonna say I'm disappointed, because this book was still so good, but I just feel a little bit let down because I wanted a 5-star and I got a 4-star instead, which is still very solid. Okay guys, we're gonna choose our next read, but because the cats chose the previous one, we're gonna get them to choose again. So Bob's is gonna go first this time. Not interested? No reading for Bob's.
She's not in the mood to read books.
Let's choose one. He keeps going that way, so I'm gonna say he chose Blast Sword. Okay, cat number 2 acquired.
This one's a curious one.
They're not in the mood. This one?
We failed. We failed, baby.
I just wanted the cats to choose what to read.
How about I choose one with my eyes closed? So shuffle them.
Oh, okay. How do you know if you're filming?
I'm filming.
Okay, choose one.
Oh, Glass Sword.
It's Glass Sword. It's the one Bob's chose.
Meant to be. Are you ready?
My gosh. Look how small the font is. I don't remember Red Queen having such a small font.
Okay, let's do the transition.
Oh.
Or do you have anything else to say?
No, not right now. Okay, so Glass Sword is the selection. Also, why does it look like it's in the middle of the night? It's literally like 5 p.m. I'm honestly not that excited for this one. So this is the sequel to Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. YA fantasy. We're set in like a dystopian type of world, and we have like 2 different kinds of humans, or I don't know if they're humans. I guess they're humans, but some humans have red blood and they're non-magical, and some humans have silver blood and they are magical and they're just like stronger. And the silver-blooded people are kind of like the capital people in the Hunger Games. There's a lot of similarities between this Red Queen world and the Hunger Games world. But in the first book, we had a girl named Meyer who, what did she even do? I feel like I've been reading so many different series. I've like lost track of which one's which. We have our main character, Meyer, who is a red blood, and she lives in this very like not wealthy red-blooded village, but she gets whisked away to the royal palace, who is silver-blooded, obviously. And from there, she meets these 2 princes. She gets into all sorts of trouble. I feel like it's always hard to talk about series because I don't want to spoil anything, but basically that's the premise of this world, and that's the premise of the first book. And the reason I'm not very excited about this book is not because Red Queen was bad. I actually rated Red Queen 4.25 stars, so I really liked the first book, but I have heard that this second book just isn't very good, and the third book isn't very good, and the fourth book also isn't very good. But of course, I'm just too curious. I need to read on and see what everyone is talking about, because I did enjoy the first one. I thought it was really fun. I didn't think it was anything like groundbreaking. It was all kind of stuff that I've seen before in other fantasy books, but it was really fun. I liked the characters and I was really interested to see where they went on in their journeys. But yeah, unfortunately, the following books they don't have good ratings, and a lot of you have also told me personally, like in comments or in DMs, that it's not worth it to continue in the series. But I'm gonna try at least one more book, and if this book is not over a 4-star rating, then I'm gonna stop with this series. But if it is a 4-star rating or higher, then maybe I will continue to give it a chance. Good morning, guys. So I did get a pretty good chunk of reading in last night. I read 130 pages last night. So, you know, I'm making my way through. Just for some initial thoughts so far, this is one of those sequels that literally picks up the second after the first book ends. Oh my gosh. Hi, Sage. We literally, like, it's the second Red Queen ends, we're like right back into it. And sometimes I like it when sequels do that, because it's like, I don't want to miss anything. Like, I want the full story. I want to jump straight back into it. But I find that when you do it, it has to start off from a place that's kind of calm. We need to set up again for the second book. Jumping straight back into the middle of a big action sequence can be, I don't know, just hard to get into. And for this book, we definitely just like dove right back into like a really, really big action scene. I honestly don't mind the story so far. I can see where it's going. It's very clear where we are headed. But I will say that I feel like the characters are being inconsistent in this book compared to the first one. We've also been set up in this position where like we can't really trust anyone around us, but I feel like the whiplash I'm getting from like, this character can be trusted. No, they can't be trusted. No, they can. No, they can't. No, they can't. No, they can't. It just keeps like flipping back and forth with like all these twists. And I feel like the whole you can trust this character, no you can't thing can be done well, but I think that's just a little overdone. I feel like when it's done well, do it once or maybe twice at maximum. I feel like this book is trying to twist so much that the twists aren't even feeling like twists anymore. That's probably a more concise way to put it. I'm gonna continue reading today and we'll see what we think.
You're the cutest little thing there ever was. Fish boy.
I finished it, you guys. I finished this book last night and I was so bored. I was really bored. Okay, what do I have to say about this book? I just feel like the same ideas, the same words, literally the exact same phrases were being repeated so many times in this book. Victoria Aveyard was trying to like push a point forward or a message, and it was like, I get it. I really, really get it. I don't need to hear about this again. I feel like for 70% of this book, we were just like in the same situation. Like we were just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it was really boring to read, sadly, because like nothing different was happening. And I think this book definitely fell into the curse of the sequel, because as I was saying, sometimes sequels just feel like build up to the next book, and that's exactly what this book felt like. It just felt like throughout the whole book we were just like preparing for the next book, but like we forgot that this book needed a story in itself as well. There were definitely some good parts though. It wasn't like the entire book was awful. There were some good parts, but there was just so much of the same. It was just an overall very dull experience reading this book. I will say like the ending, probably like the last 100, maybe 80 pages were really interesting and exciting, and things were happening and the plot was pushing forward, and I was like, where was that for the rest of this book? Because I feel like Red Queen was so fast paced, so many things happening all the time, and then Glass Sword just wasn't. I feel like a lot of the scenes that we got in this book we didn't need to get. Like we could have been shown all that stuff in like, I don't know, some sort of a montage, quote unquote, but instead we got very, very detailed scenes that were mundane. But then there were parts in this book that were skipped over that I feel like I needed to get more in detail. Like things would happen, but they wouldn't be mentioned or described, and then in the next chapter all of a sudden we'd be referring to something that happened. I'd be like, wait, what? When did that happen? I don't remember reading that. And then I would flip back and then realize that those parts weren't written. So yeah, I'm really torn because I did like the ending of this book when things started to actually happen. I got invested back into the characters and I was like finally feeling some sort of emotion. Now I'm really torn if I want to continue this series or not, because I don't want to read through another book that's like this, but I also kind of still want to know what happens to these characters. So I'm gonna ask you guys again, even though I didn't listen to you last time, do you think I should continue on with the series or not?
Do you want to know what happens, baby?
Curse of the sequel. The time has come again.
What? How fast did you read that?
I don't know, like 2 days?
Do you want me to close my eyes and choose, or leave it up to the cats?
I don't know, the cats failed us last time,
Cats failed us.
so
I don't trust the cats.
maybe it's gotta be you.
It's gotta be me.
Okay, go.
I touched both.
Should we try again?
We gotta try again. Put them a bit farther apart.
Okay, go. Okay, I'm excited for this one. Are we doing? We're doing it again?
Yes, we've done it twice. So
I messed it up last time though. I
I
didn't
know
do.
you never
I-
get it right.
I didn't do an out transition.
Jamie, what's happening? What's happening to you?
I did it. The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. This is the sequel to Poppy War. I'm so excited for this one because, oh, I'm kind of matching the book right now. From Poppy War, there are characters that I just... This is probably a little bit spoilery, so please skip if you have not read Poppy War yet. But from Poppy War, there are a couple of deaths that I just don't believe or I can't accept in my heart. And I just... I need to know if these characters are actually gone or not, because there's something in me, in my heart, in my brain that just doesn't accept that they're gone. And I feel like these characters are gonna come back. And if they don't come back, my heart is gonna be broken. This book is a bit thicker than Poppy War. Oh, my laundry's finished. This book is 654 pages long, so we're gonna be reading this for quite a few days. Let's get into it. I'm ready for my heart to be wrenched open again by R.F. Kuang and her characters in this trilogy, Poppy War, or Dragon Republic. Okay, this is so exciting because we have our original map. This is the same map that was in Poppy War, but I flipped the page and we have like a more zoomed in, closer look at a certain area in the map. I love it. Something about maps and books, you guys. That is something actually that was missing in A Gathering of Shadows / A Darker Shade of Magic and Red Queen / Glass Sword. We didn't have maps for those worlds, and I feel like maps just add so much. Because then you can just like more visually picture where everything and everyone is, you know? But that's exciting, I love it.
On the lawn chair in all the colors.
Guys, I'm so happy right now. If I think what's happening is happening. Guys, I almost knocked my camera over. It has been a couple of days again, a couple of very hectic days. I did have to go out of town for a few days because of some personal reasons, but we are back. I did manage to read, I'm on page 204, so I did manage to read a bit over the past few days. Sage! Hey! Oh, that's Bob. Sorry, Sage. Bobs, don't scratch the couch, baby. What was I saying? This is very chaotic. I did manage to read up to page 204 in the past couple of days while I was away, so I just wanted to talk about it because I haven't talked about this book with you guys yet, I don't think. When was the last time I spoke to you? I don't know. My poor little book did get a little mangled because I was traveling with it, so I had to like stuff my book in my bag and stuff. I am loving the Dragon Republic so far. It is such a great sequel so far, at least in the first 200 pages. I'm loving it. And the funny thing is, while reading this, I am seeing a lot of similarities between Dragon Republic and Glass Sword, but I feel like Dragon Republic is what Glass Sword wanted to be, kind of, because we do have a lot of similarities in terms of like what we're going through, kind of like the point of the book, it seems like. So in both books, we're following our main character as she is kind of coming to terms with like what she's just done, what's just happened, and dealing with the trauma that comes from that. Also in both books, I don't know if this is a spoiler, it's very, very general. In both books, we are preparing like an army or like preparing for the next steps in whatever political fantasy warfare is happening. So there is similarity in that. So yeah, I feel like in both books, we are following a very similar path. But while Glass Sword was so boring and repetitive and it was just like all the same recruitment missions and it was very dull, Dragon Republic is not. And I've been trying to think of like specific reasons as to why I am enjoying Dragon Republic so much more. I think for one, in Glass Sword, we just like got the same repetitive like thoughts in our main character's head over and over and over and over again, like literally the exact same phrases of how she was feeling, and it got really repetitive and really boring. Where in Dragon Republic, we are going through kind of like similar emotions, but we're just seeing like more variety in like how these emotions are being expressed through actions, through words, through inner thoughts. It's just like a lot more in depth. And then also in both stories, I did mention that we're kind of preparing for the next stages in political warfare or battle or whatever. And where in Glass Sword, all of our missions seemed to be almost copy and paste from each other. We didn't really advance the plot for each mission. Like some of them seemed significant, but some of them just felt like filler. In Dragon Republic, literally everything that happens is like a unique event. We get something new from it, and every single thing that happens in this book pushes the plot forward. There is not a single non-important word or sentence in this book. Everything you read has significance, and that's why Dragon Republic is so much better. But yeah, I do have, I don't know, like 400 pages to go, so we have a lot to read. I'm going to get to that, and hopefully this book holds up throughout the rest of the book. I'm so happy with this so far. So happy. I think this is the best sequel so far that I've read in this video. Fingers crossed that it stays that way.
Who told you that it was too late? When was it that you started leaning that way? 4 tires cut into the clay.
We did it, you guys. We finished Dragon Republic. 650 pages later. We are here. Okay. I think I'm gonna give this book 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I think the half star I took off was just because there was one part in this book where I was like, okay, it's starting to like drag on a little bit, but that was just for one section of the book. And for a 650 page book, I think honestly that's really impressive that only one part seemed to drag on. But okay, what did I think? A lot of stuff happened. Lots of dramatic moments, lots of parts in this book that made me just gasp. Kind of all the way throughout this book. I feel like sometimes with longer fantasy books, authors like to wait until like the last 100 pages of the book to make things exciting and dramatic, and you get those moments. But in the Dragon Republic, we get those moments kind of like throughout the entire book, honestly, and I really appreciate that. I did write down a couple things yesterday. I don't remember what I wrote down. Oh, there are also some like funny aspects in this book, which is a little bit surprising because the overall book and the story and like the message behind it is so serious. I just don't expect comedic moments from books like this, but we do get that in the Dragon Republic. So I don't know, there was like one part that made me laugh out loud. There were a couple parts that made me laugh out loud, but this part I wrote down. So basically the premise of this book, this is not a spoiler, this is just like the entire concept, is that we're in a fantastical world. It's all made up, but we basically have a country that resembles China, we have a country that resembles Japan, and then we have a country that represents like America. And so we have this moment in the Dragon Republic where we meet like the Americans for the first time, and we have all of our like Chinese characters essentially meeting these American characters and seeing what they look like. And so we get this moment where they're like, those are humans, like they look so different, like they don't look like us at all. And they said, yeah, they look weird because they drink cow's milk and all that dairy milk is just like messing them up. And I found that funny, like as a Chinese person, like I know Chinese people don't drink like cow's milk, and I don't know, I guess like the joke and the reference to the real world kind of caught me off guard and made me giggle. But then also intermingled throughout the book, there are very disturbing parts in this book. Very disturbing things happen that are described quite graphically and in detail, so make sure you check trigger warnings before you get into this and Poppy War, and I'm sure the third book. But overall, this book was so good, made me laugh, made me cry. I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat after the way this book ended, so I really want to get into the third book sooner rather than later. But yeah, this is how you do a sequel. And now we move on to our fourth sequel for this video. Let's just put this back. We have Wicked King. So this is a sequel to The Cruel Prince. I'm really excited about this one. I feel like this book is so different from the Poppy War trilogy, but I think something it has in common is that while we're dealing with some serious things happening, Holly Black, the author of the Cruel Prince trilogy, also likes to throw in a bit of comedy, a bit of comedic relief in places. I'm excited to get into this one. This one is also like not nearly as long. It's definitely a much thinner book compared to the Dragon Republic. Let's try and check the page numbers without spoiling ourselves. We are at 322 pages for this book, so it's like half the length of the Dragon Republic. It basically took me like 6 days, 5 or 6 days to read the Dragon Republic, and I feel like I could have gotten through it faster, to be honest, but you know, just things happen in my personal life, so I didn't have as much time to read as usual this week. But hopefully we'll get through this book a bit more quickly. I don't know. But we'll go with it. The Wicked King. We have some new locations on the map. I'm gonna be honest. Okay. I read a bit more yesterday. I'm actually filming this video over like Christmas right now. It's actually Christmas Day right now, so Merry Christmas. I know when this video goes up, it'll be a lot later, but I read up to page 166 and I have some thoughts, okay? So first of all, I'm kind of sad to say this because a lot of you told me that the second book is actually a lot better than the first book. And for the first 100 pages of this book, I don't know, I feel like I wasn't getting into it. I wasn't really feeling it. I feel like the beginning of this book was quite slow. We spent a lot of time, I feel like, resolving what happened at the end of the first book, and we had a lot of like political conflict setup, I think, which usually like I love all the politics of fantasies and like getting into all that stuff, but for some reason the way it was done in this book, I feel like it was a bit dull for me to read. Like for some reason I couldn't get into it. I couldn't like get myself to care about what was happening and like who was betraying who was working with who. I don't know, it didn't do it for me for some reason. I also was not feeling the dynamic between our two main characters in the first 100 pages, which is really sad for me again because I loved their dynamic in The Cruel Prince. I thought their like tension, their conflict, I thought it was really interesting and fun to read, but I wasn't feeling it in the first 100 pages of this book. I feel like everything felt forced, similar to how I felt about the two main characters when I was reading The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, which if you know me, that's not a good thing coming from me. Slow start, I feel like, getting into this book, and I'm already halfway at this point pretty much because this book is not that long, and I feel like honestly after the 100-page mark it did start picking up a bit and got more interesting. I feel like our two main characters also like they got a bit of that old spark back. But yeah, for like a 300-page book when the first 100 pages is like not that great, like it's just okay, I feel like that's not a good thing. That's like a third of the book, you know? Maybe the second half is like really good. I can feel it start to pick up again, and I am like gaining interest and intrigue back into the story and the world, so that is a good thing. I also, okay, we're gonna be kind of spoilery for a bit, so please skip ahead if you have not read The Cruel Prince or The Wicked King. I feel like one of the main reasons why I'm like having trouble getting into this book is like one of our main conflicts is that Jude has put Cardan under her command, right? She like forced him to like swear loyalty to her for exactly a year and a day, and so she's like stressing out now because it's been like 5 or 6 months, and she's like, oh no, our time is going to like run out, and then you're not going to be on my side and supporting me and doing whatever I want you to do anymore. And one of the main things she's focusing on is trying to figure out how to maintain control over Cardan. Like maybe this is too obvious, but I'm like, if you have control over him, like if you are in command of him, can't you just command him to swear longer to you? Just be like, hey Cardan, swear longer to me, like swear that you will follow me and be loyal to me for 10 years. You know, maybe there's some sort of like fairy magic loophole around that, but if there is, it either has not been mentioned or I'm just forgetting and blanking and I'm dumb and I don't know how to make the connection. I can't recall that being mentioned, but I have been reading a lot of different fantasies in a lot of different worlds, so maybe it's something that I have forgotten myself. So if you have an answer to that, please let me know in the comments, because I feel like just that magic system plot hole is throwing me off, and I'm like, well, can't you just tell him to swear longer to you? I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know what your theories are, or if I'm just like missing something gigantic, but I feel like her main issue is not that big of a problem because she could just fix it by commanding Cardan. But yeah, as I mentioned, the book is picking up for me again, like since the 100-page mark. I feel like it's been getting better, so hopefully it just keeps going up and up and up, and hopefully I end up really liking this sequel. But we're gonna read as much as we can today. I am filming like a Christmas video, so I know I'm not being too vloggy right now with this video, and I'm being more like talky and only like filming when I have something to say about the book. But I also feel like this video is getting really long, so maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I'll just update you when I'm done this book. I am so sad to do this, but I'm giving this book a 3.75 star rating, which is lower than when I rated the first book. I rated Cruel Prince a 4.5, and I'm going to tell you why I think this book wasn't as good as the first book, or at least why I didn't like it as much as the first book because I know a lot of people do think the sequel is better. And I have already talked about a lot of stuff, so I'm not going to repeat that, but I did write down a couple more thoughts as I was reading the last bit of the book. So overall, I feel like the main thing that was missing in The Wicked King compared to The Cruel Prince was that it didn't have any of the playfulness or like whimsy that the first book had, and that was a big part of why I did like The Cruel Prince. It was because I feel like Holly Black, as the author in The Cruel Prince, developed this really in-depth, amazing world that was just described in such a whimsical way. She had a lot of fun with it. We got a lot of details about the world, which made everything a lot more immersive. When I was reading The Cruel Prince, I feel like I was getting Stephenie Garber vibes. The worlds and the magic and everything are very different from Stephenie Garber books, but just the way everything was described, just the way Holly Black was having fun with it, I loved that. And The Wicked King, I feel like focused more on like the high stakes seriousness of the plot, but we forgot about that like whimsical vibe that the first book had. And don't get me wrong, I do love my good, serious, high stakes fantasy books, but I feel like just because the whimsy was what I liked about The Cruel Prince, I was missing that here. Something else, I don't know if anyone else got this, but I had a hard time understanding like some of the sentences in The Wicked King. I can't like put my finger on exactly what it was, but I feel like a lot of the sentences, especially in the dialogue, I had to reread like 5 times before I understood the meaning of it and like what we were saying. I didn't feel this way when I was reading The Cruel Prince, but a lot of the sentences, like the sentence structure, was very confusing to me in Wicked King. Maybe that's a me thing, I don't know. But I was getting very frustrated because I had to read a lot of sentences over and over and over again, and I don't know, I wasn't catching on. And then I also want to talk about the romance subplot in this book. And I know that this like couple has a big fandom online, but I wasn't feeling them. I feel like the relationship in The Cruel Prince and in this book was very rocky, and don't get me wrong, I love a good roller coaster of a relationship. I love the ups and downs. That's what makes a good relationship arc in a story, right? But when it's so turbulent, I feel like it went too far in this book that I just zoned out. I tapped out of the relationship because I wasn't believing it. Our two main characters were flip-flopping between being so infatuated and attracted to each other to all of a sudden fully not trusting each other, literally betraying each other and doing these things to each other that like two people who like each other or love each other would not do. So it really made me like stop believing in their feelings for each other. I feel like ups and downs in relationships should, yeah, like we should have some arguments, we should have some disagreements, we should have resentment, and maybe our characters just don't like communicate well to each other or like make mistakes. Maybe they accidentally do something to harm each other, but they wouldn't do it on purpose. I feel like in this book, our two main characters and our love interest literally do things that have very, very severe consequences to each other, and I'm just not so into that. That being said, I do still hold, you know, a love for Elfhame, this world, in my heart, and I will continue on to the 3rd book. Maybe this was just another case of the curse of the bad sequel. I still love this world. I think there are still redeeming parts to the story, but this book just didn't do it for me. Those are all the sequels I'm going to be reading in this video. I did read 4 sequels, and this video is so long at this point, but as a short conclusion, I guess the curse of the sequel might be true, because in this video I read 4 sequels and I enjoyed 2 of them. I did like A Gathering of Shadows and The Dragon Republic, but even for those 2 sequels, I rated both of them lower than I rated the first books in those respective series. So like, what are the chances that I read 4 sequels in this video and all of them were worse than the first book? In my opinion, at least. Very, very interesting. Let me know what you think about the curse of the sequel and if it's like a real thing or not. Maybe the majority of sequels do fall under this curse. So I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. If you liked this video, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know if you'd like to see a video of me finishing all of these series that I'm in the middle of. I probably won't go on in the Red Queen world, but the other 3 series I will continue. So let me know if you want to see a video of that. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!